Welcome to Chasing Rings Overtime. These fast break episodes are an extension of the main show, delivering quick-hitting takes, bold opinions, and analysis on the biggest stories and topics across sports. While we remain rooted in football year-round, Overtime expands our lens to cover everything happening across the sports world. We will return for a second season of full-length episodes in July as we ramp up for complete NCAA football and NFL coverage in preparation for the 2026 seasons. Until then, let's go. This is Chasing Rings Overtime. Welcome to Chasing Rings Overtime. Good evening, fellas. What's happening?
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Yeah, what's going on, brothers?
Everybody have a good day.
Real good.
That's cool. That's
Feel
cool.
100% better now.
That's good, man. That's good. So it has been an interesting year with regards to the college sports landscape. It's just the topic that will not go away with all of the NIL, the eligibility stuff. You know, now we have gambling. Feel like college sports somehow, some way is always in the headlines. So tonight we're going to hop in and we're going to take a look at this bipartisan bill that is under review in Congress now. It's actually called the Protect College Sports Act, which is a pretty interesting title for it, since I don't know if it's actually protecting college sports. But some of the key components of it are putting a salary cap on this wild, wild west NIL stuff that's taking place right now, restricting transfers to one transfer without a penalty, trying to cap eligibility at 5 years. And an interesting one that I didn't realize until I was digging a little bit deeper today is capping the agent fees at 5%, which I think that they're trying to throw a bone out there. I mean, obviously this is an attack on the players. And the same thing with the coach mobility, no poaching of coaches in season. But come on, if you're planning to hire a coach, you're trying to tell me that you have a way of proving that there was no conversation with this coach during the season. I find that highly unlikely. But a lot of this is aimed at the players, obviously. You know, we'd be crazy to act otherwise. Gentlemen, looking at some of these restrictions that they're outlining here, like, you know, obviously limiting athletes to just one penalty-free transfer and capping eligibility are the ones that really jump out at me. What's going to happen? First of all, I mean, we don't think this is going to pass. I think that we talked about this earlier, but let's say this did pass. How are you still going to police this? Especially, I'm looking at the transfer one, for example. And if you think about before we got to the point where we are now in college sports, where people were transferring and they had hardship, basically was a hardship rule, and you could prove that there was a reason that you needed to transfer, you know, family issues, things like that. What are we doing here? Like, what are we really doing here? Gee,
Yeah,
I know you have a lot to say about this. Start us off, man. What's happening?
I actually read the entire bill, and I went and actually pulled it up on the Gov site and read it. And I'm telling you, man, if I had to boil it down, this bill is about money. The colleges who are making money, they're going to continue to get theirs because there's the antitrust pieces that could come into play in all of this. There are some places where they're given a break, they being the colleges and the conferences, so on and so forth. It's money for the media. And if we can get into it a little bit more, but the media is basically made whole. And the students under this will still actually make quite a bit of cheese, no doubt about that. So they'll still get their money. I do have some questions about that though. But long story short, this is definitely not about tightening up the system.
No.
This is about securing the money that's already flowing to the major hands. That's what this is about. And so to your point about the portal, that's one way to ensure consistency. You see, one of the things that business folk like, and I get it, is consistency. You don't need a whole bunch of um, things just coming out of nowhere. Change is not necessarily great when it's constant. So
Mhm.
businesses want consistency. They want to be able to project year to year what their money, what are their financial outlays are going to be, and what are they going to bring in and where. And if you can keep the students in place, that's the hugest part of the uncertainty. The coaches, that's a secondary thing, to be quite honest. That's really that's really the Lane Kiffin rule.
That's exactly what it
And
is.
it only applies. Let me see, I wrote a note about that because I said it only applies to FBS, which tells you it's definitely not about improving the game. It's about
It really
gaming the
doesn't.
game.
It really doesn't change anything for the coaches, to be quite honest, because one of our big sticking points is that the coach shouldn't just be able to leave these programs high and dry, and it doesn't
Mhm,
prevent that. You're talking about timing of conversations and hiring. You're not really
mhm.
stopping that machine from poaching your coach and leaving an entire
Yeah.
recruiting class high and dry.
Oh, most definitely. The coaches can you can come according to this, what I read, I can start today and in December, I could already be ready to go to a different job. But I can't leave until my season's
Exactly.
fully done. But I can be gone. And what
Yep.
would that be, 7, 8 months? So
Yep.
the coaching and part of the consistency world it did not make that consistent. For me, making that consistent would be is that you're a coach, you sign a contract. We're not buying out your doggone contract. To stop
Yep.
people from buying out these contracts.
Yep.
And that's just wasting money, particularly if it's a state institution. You're wasting money. Now, these state institutions will probably say the collective is pretty much doing it. That's probably
Mhm.
what they'll probably say. But my larger point is, if it's really about trying to make it more consistent for the betterment of the game, you shouldn't be able to pay out these coaches. Now, I can see if you've been there, you have a 5 year contract. You're finishing year three. You may be getting going to year four. You may be striking it hot. I
Mhm.
might be in, and no knock on the ACC. I'm an ACC fan. I might be at Carolina, and I might have them playing better than they played in a long time. And I'm in my third year, and then uh, here come LSU want me to play, or Georgia want me to play. Yeah, I get somebody want to leave, but I don't believe Georgia should be paying them out. They just need to forego their money and then just move to Georgia and
Yeah,
Carolina just let
exactly.
it go.
Exactly. Forego your money, exactly.
Just
Because you
forego
can't,
your
it's like
money.
anybody else with a job. I have a right to leave my job for a better opportunity, but it's got
Yep.
to be done the right way, right? In the corporate world, you put in your 2 weeks and all of that formal stuff,
Hmm.
right? Coaches are just bouncing. And this
Hmm.
Lane Kiffin rule, the only thing that this would really change if you take Lane Kiffin as the prototype is he just would have been there for the CFP. It doesn't
Basically,
change anything else. He just would
that's
have
it.
been present.
He
So
would have been
definitely
present.
doesn't fix on the coaching end. Big dude, definitely want your perspective on this. Having been a part of that big time world on the football end, what is your perspective on what they're trying to do here, man? I mean, come on.
I, I'm not sure. I think I'm with you, G, and you, Guru. To talk about the money. The money is the biggest part. The money has to do with the 5 years of eligibility. That's the most you can make in 5 years. You get it all done, and you can't go finish somewhere as a graduate student all the time and go get um, uh, a $6-7 million NIL contract. It'll be in 4 years over a three million one that you had, but the money is still coming from private sources. That's why I don't understand, making this bill. You're preventing it in one way, but the folks that are the corporate people, and G mentioned that the corporate people and the companies, they want consistency also, but they also want the access that they already had. And I just say that they're going to end up in court again over these circumstances that do we have a real case where someone can go past 5 years? Are there any circumstances for that? If it does get passed, this is back to your question, Guru, if it gets passed, how many people will they just say something about, and we've seen it, that will transfer once? How do you decide that? Or how do you decide if there's a situation where something bad happened with the program and there's some bad circumstances with the coaches? Because some of the coaches that are leaving early, they have some people there that are coaching that are good coaches, not very good men. Well, especially in college, and it could be a woman one day, but just not very good situations. So you have to have the right to get out of those particular situations. The other thing is too, who are these individuals that are playing college football? Are they employees? Are they amateurs? Are they professionals? I don't know of any amateur that's going to make $6 million a year. How can you call someone an amateur? And even if they're still getting paid, how can you call them that? The money
this
is
law specifically doesn't touch it.
Right.
There's a section on it about it, but they don't touch it.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So this spells out, and I know our time is short, so this spells out one thing. But on the other hand, there isn't anything that could atone for not just special circumstances. There's still things that this bill is tiptoeing on, and they have a nerve to make it bipartisan, but it's still interesting because I still don't know what the bipartisan thing, who would benefit. Do you just want it to not look as good, or is it who comes home with the biggest fish first with this legislation? Because it's still going to be about who did more. It's bipartisan. Maybe the signatures are there, but who did more to take that? Who's going to be the hero to take all this stench that's in college football that people, call, playing and NIL and all these other things that are coming through, with the coaches, with the revenue, and the athletes can still get it unless they changed it. They still can get part of the revenue. I know this whole thing is in court. I just say, just to tie the whole thing up, if everything is passed the way that we've seen it written, and I haven't had a chance to read the whole legislation, but to look at the aggregate points that you mentioned, I think we're going to be back to court again. If we thought we were in court for Brandon Sorsby, everybody's going to end up going to court. The NCAA might as well restructure all their people, and no one still talks about the absolute authority of the individual 50 states and what they're going to do.
Well, supposedly part of the reason for this was because the 50 states, they have different NIL approaches.
Yes.
So that's also a big part of the uncertainty. I think local media outlets and those who own the local media outlets, I'd be curious to hear their thoughts on this, because it only requires one local media outlet per game. So, I'm a Buckeye fan, right? So basically it's like, okay, we're playing, and I only have to let, one of the big four affiliates run the game. But then you have, outside of the Columbus market, you definitely have, still you have different locals. And so there's a network of those in each state, and there's a network in the region in the country. And I can see them getting frozen out a whole lot of games, because if you go tell me I only have to do one, I might just do that one, and everything else I'm putting behind a paywall.
Yeah,
and so now the regional and national agreements, those will likely have paywall aspects too. So, for example, like the Big Ten network, the SEC network, kind of these regional networks, and they have a paywall. So yeah, I can see the owners of the local outlets. I'd be curious to hear what they have to say about all this. I'd be curious to hear what if basketball, because a lot of this is geared toward the CFP. I'd be curious about how that works with March Madness. and think about how much money that brings in, but they have a carve out here that's not touched. So there's just a few inconsistencies here that I'd be real curious about how those get argued and addressed. I don't think this will
And
pass the way it is.
yeah, and bringing up March Madness, they already have a pretty nice and tidy revenue sharing structure just from the tournament alone. That's indisputable. No one's ever um, arguing about it. It's very clear
Mhm.
cut. And again, you don't even need to be the team that advances. Just being in that conference that has teams, advancing through the conference, you're automatically sharing in that. But I think that they think they're cleaning up something that they let evolve into a mess. And you nailed it, big dude. It's only going to get messier.
Yep.
Because if we look at the key components of this, we could probably come up with just so many scenarios that we can think of, things that we've seen where an athlete might have a case against, whoa, wait a minute. I need to transfer this second time because of variable A, or, you know, I was, I got an injury that was caused because of negligence on the college's trainer's part. I
Hmm.
couldn't redshirt because it was too late, but I got bad medical advice, and I've lost this year. They're just telling me I can't get back because you only get, they're not thinking about all these different scenarios that can arise. And you're right, big dude. They're going to end up in court even more if they try to make it this restrictive. I just think you've already let everything go up to this point. You can't, you ever get those every time you get a package, right, and you open up something and you need to return it, it never fits back in there the way it came.
Yep.
It never fits back in here. They're
But
trying
bro,
to.
here's the thing. There are three things that I really think about, and I can shut it down for this unless you want me to say
No,
it more.
keep going. Keep going.
Is
Let's
that
delve into it.
the athletes at some point, if they ever decide to take a stand in the midst of all of this, they probably shut this thing down because it really hinders them. And I think in a way that's unreasonable. I don't. It's not that I believe in a free fall transfer process. I don't. But at the same time, this right here was like crazy restrictive. But here's the thing. And remember, I mentioned about antitrust and how there's some wiggle room in here. That's all about the college football playoff. If you really think about it, that CFP pretty much has a lockdown on the top bowls, and so and that those bowl organizations are a part of this, and they're not going to give that up at all. And then the final piece I was going to say is, you why not just move all of this back under the NCAA? Because right now it's not under the NCAA. Only FCS, D2, and D3 are under the NCAA. FBS is a whole private entity. So this is all trying to protect that private entity. If you really wanted to rein this in, NCAA is already have a structure in place.
Yeah, but you know what? The NCAA wants to play innocent bystander all the time,
Yes.
right? They wanna rake in the dough, but they always want to be like, oh, I was there, but I didn't see it. They want to play hands off, but you're absolutely right. Gee, they have had license to control this forever. And
They
now they're
won't. That's the
playing, well,
university presidents.
yes, absolutely. That's their vote, right? All the university presidents make up the NCAA. And I would argue that they're probably in collusion in however college sports trends, these ebbs and
Oh,
flows that
heck
we've
yeah.
seen. It's definitely collusion behind the scenes, because you're not going to allow all of these things to happen that we've seen, especially of late, not do anything about it when you are convening for your annual conference and your various meetings, not doing a damn thing about it. And why aren't they doing anything about it? Because even though it's a runaway train, as long as people's pockets are bulging, that's all that really matters at the end of the day. They
It
don't
definitely
care
is.
if the NIL deals are, outrageous. They don't care if student athletes are playing nine. They don't even. Why are we more outraged than the governing body, or the alleged governing body of sports, is about this situation? They seem to have no problem with this. And
They're not paying us tens of millions of dollars.
exactly. And one, can any of us name who the NCAA president is right now? I used to know, but I don't know if it's the
Is it
same person.
Charlie Baker?
I don't
I
have
don't
any
even know
idea.
anymore.
I have no idea. I have no idea who the NCAA president is right now. Sounds familiar. The last I knew, it was Mark Emmert, and I know he hasn't been in a few years.
Let's see.
But my point is, come on, no one's speaking out about this. We should know who the NCAA president is, because they should be having a voice in what's been happening over the last several years in college sports. And they're just sitting here watching this. Just it's like it's like this shrub in your yard that you just letting it go. You're not doing anything to get rid of it, and you're complaining that it's uprooting your landscape, the rest of your landscaping, and your concrete starting to pop up. Well, you let it grow to this point. Too late now.
You have to realize now the NCAA as an organization is, think about the NFL, for example. Since we're on football, we'll keep it football. Think about the NFL. Roger Goodell and the whole offices, NFL offices, yes, they have some power over some things, but the owners really control how the NFL rolls, and that's how NCAA is set up.
Yep, great analogy.
Yes, the NCAA has the power that the presidents have given that organization.
Yeah.
So to your point, Guru, a lot of this could have been prevented and or cleaned up a long time ago if those presidents wanted it to.
See, and I'll take it a step real quick further. I think the NCAA stood by idly for more than 45 years on this whole discussion of compensation, and ducted and did commercials differently to talk about what a blessing it is to play. And I'm one of those people that'll say it was a blessing for me to play, but no one talked about the $12 we got for meal money for the weekend when one game, then you got $20 to go on the way game.
That's ridiculous.
Big dude, they start pushing that student athlete thing.
Right.
So y'all are just students. Like, come on, y'all.
Yeah, we don't see those commercials as much anymore, do we?
No, we don't. And when the Fab Five came up with the whole thing, they even started selling the Fab Five black socks, and nobody was wearing black socks, but Michigan made black socks with an M on them that nobody else ever had. They were just wearing. All of a sudden, there's black socks with a little M. So there's just so much, again, the hypocrisy in this. And I think they don't think they're going to win absolutely with this bill. They know there's going to be adjustments. But still, this is about who's going to come up, who's going to be the big hero with this whole proposal, this whole legislation that they're trying to put forward. Who bipartisan, but who's the hero? Somebody. And, without getting into some of the things, we know some of those situations and other things, but who is the hero? Who is the person that is going to change? And how do people, and the fact that nobody knows, and it is Charlie Baker. Charlie Baker apparently is not important. Like you said, we don't know who obviously we don't. The SEC just had their meeting. Charlie Baker's name didn't come up once in any of those meeters.
Well, you got to figure he's nothing more than a mouthpiece, isn't he? And he isn't even being that right now.
Right. And now the last part is for this, the SEC and the Big Ten coming together. They realize if somehow they do come together, then it's really out of control. My thing is it?
Aren't they already? Technically, aren't they already together?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. And they're thinking this. Now again, you didn't read. You read the legislation. I kept hearing, and all the stuff I saw is that part of the reason this bill came up is to prevent that. And I don't see how it can. I really don't see it, since the college presidents are, their voices are being heard, and the president of the NCAA. That's why there's no reason for them to be involved, because Charlie Baker has no voice in any of this. That's why it had to go to Congress. But then
it doesn't stop them from. It doesn't stop colleges from contracting, conferences from contracting. Right. It doesn't stop any of that.
No. And I guess what I'm saying is how much farther. So having this bill, and that was a question that Guru had, if it passes, it doesn't stop them from a whole lot. That's what I'm saying. So all it does is set up hurdles. and people figure out how to run the hurdles. People who ran hurdles, you run high hurdles in high school, 39 inches high for high hurdles, but then you go 42 inches in the NCAA. And guess what? If somebody moved it up to 43 inches, you'd have to figure out how to get over that one. So that's what we have here. We have a bunch of hurdles and a bunch of obstacles that this sets up. And I think this is really designed to slow things down. But the constituencies are all over the place. There's no continuity between constituencies. It may be bipartisan, but there's no continuity between the constituencies about what should happen.
Yeah, you bring up the Fab Five, and it just my stomach almost turned because you're talking about 1991, man. And I remember when all of that stuff went down with, Chris Webber mentioning walking by the bookstore and seeing his jersey hanging up in there for $100, and how everybody was just so outraged. Like, aren't they just happy to be in school and getting their scholarship and all that? But 35 years, I think Fab Five came in 1991. 35 years, we still having the same conversation, and the money is flowing, but we're still having the same conversation because it seems like,
don't you think? Now they try to limit the kids from
well, that's what I was about to say. That's going to be the rest of my
ahead.
statement. The kids are getting their money now, and now they still got a problem with it. They still have. I think if the student athletes never started getting any money, we won't be here right now. All of the other things could have been happening. The media contract skyrocketing. It wasn't until student athletes started getting their piece of the pie, which I've always argued about. Once they started getting their piece of the pie, then it became a problem.
Exactly.
And the big thing for me, and you guys may disagree with me, the only thing one of my sticking points has always been, okay, you don't have to pay me this straight up salary, right? We don't have to structure it as a salary. Don't put my likeness in a video game.
That's right.
And I'm not going to get anything out of it. My whole thing was, let me capitalize off my likeness. If you want to use my likeness, we can make a deal for that. But let me, if I can if I'm the top rated quarterback in the country, I'll go hustle and get my money. I'm gonna get my commercials, and I got a sneaker and all that type of stuff, because that's the hustle that you weren't allowing me to do before. That's kind of all I wanted starting off. Allow me to start a business.
But that's what I thought it was going to be.
That's what I thought too, man. That's what I thought too.
And then when they didn't entertain anything else, and then the Ed O'Bannon case comes to fruition, the decision, and then California is the place that people started going to schools because they could have an autograph show. They could go make an appearance at a car dealership or stores, because California was the first state. Then we went from one state, then to 5, then to 9, then to 29, then 35. And I don't know what number we're at now, but every state, like you said, G, they have their own way of doing this NIL stuff. And that's why, unless there's some way Congress can back it out, they can't. I really think this is going to become mute. And then it's about, to me, I think it's about the money, but I still think it's about who brings back the biggest prize. And the money is the biggest thing. So, yeah, it is about the money, but
and they don't want it to be the students.
No, they don't. And you got people coming in 18 years old. They drive on campus now, and the first thing they're doing is trying to find out what house they're going to buy. We were just worried about whether they still make cheesesteaks here. Like, where's the cheesesteak place? They're talking about buying a house. I think I was 31 years old when I finally got a chance to buy a house. And,
it's so different.
The context keeps changing. That's why that bill, if it passes, it's not going to stay the same, because the contexts are too free flowing. I just don't see that happening.
But I think one of the things that's enlightening about it is that I think people had this perception for so many years now that student athletes were living a certain way. Yeah. And now they see with this that maybe they weren't living the way that you thought they were living.
No.
And I know big dude. But go ahead, G.
So when I was reading the law, and he was using some examples about, they brought up the collectives and how wealthy donors it could be business people. All of them will put money into this collective, and then that through the collective, they will work out the NIL deals. And and they gave some examples of things where they may show up at signing events. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they may do some local things. But hold on for a minute, y'all. I got a cough.
That's kind of one of the things that people don't know about what G's starting to bring up, all of these appearances and all of these obligations that the student athletes have just to get that money. I think a lot of people think that the student athletes just getting a check cut, every so often and just going and balling on, whatever their sport is, or the Tuesday night or a Saturday afternoon or whatever the case may be. But it's much bigger than that. I mean, we've graduated from an era where, and I remember being around a lot of people where car dealers were just giving these guys the cars. Now you got to be in the commercial and, you got to earn the vehicle that was just given to you. So I think I kind of jumped in a little bit which we're talking about before you bounce. G, if you want
But
to.
that's exactly where I was going.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you too, because you are in markets where they're pretty large and you got like pretty large universities around. Did you see a lot of ads, be it print, be it social media, television, radio, where a lot of the top college football players were pushing product?
Not
So
back in the day, but I see some now. But I also saw players with things, and I'm not going to give up. I want to say so badly, but I'm not going to give up where I saw it. We all knew in the local area that there were certain basketball players had vehicles that they shouldn't have had. Let's put it that way.
Well,
And we knew
look,
who
I'm
they were getting them
sorry.
from. We knew who they were getting them from, and we knew where they were getting a lot of things from. And but they weren't, versus now they weren't appearing in ads, and there was no association with the organization itself. Versus now, I think you do see it a little bit more. Like I passed a billboard the other day, and we had just moved here. I didn't know who it was, but apparently it's a hoops player for one of the schools in the area. So I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, that's what they're doing now. But I see it a little bit. I see it a little bit.
What about you, big dude?
while I was in school, I mean, it's hard to tell. When I think about it, I mean, that was
Talking about
40 some
now.
years ago. Oh, now.
Yeah.
I, well, I would say that from what I remember, I remember, well, this was years ago. I remember Saquon, this one person you started to see some things with. And again, it was mostly
Mhm.
now you see the last names on jerseys. It would be the number. So you might have saw, so I did see some jerseys from, I think from Singleton. That's right, because there's a picture that I had that somebody has a number 10 Singleton jersey on. That's one guy. But I don't know if he was killing them like that, though. I mean, it was, there are people that are around at Penn State, and I haven't gone to any of the bookstores. So usually you go to the bookstore, as you remember, Guru, you went there at one time. It's a that's the dictator of what happens. Of course, things are so different with social media and being able to buy things online. It's hard to tell exactly, especially with the new group of people that are coming in. So there were some, and I didn't go up this year, so I didn't see this year. The year before, you saw a few things, mostly the running backs. And then you have some other folks that are involved with organizations, so they may get a little bit tip on that, but many of them have their own businesses. That's the biggest
But
thing.
the reason why I asked is for the amount of money that they're getting, that they're playing, it could being paid. You're not seeing them, push the product. I mean, you
You're
think about
absolutely
some of these
right.
NFL players who have these NFL deals, and you see them all over the place. So nah, this is straight up pay to play, y'all, and
It
it's
is.
rapid.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's disguised a little bit as G, as I think about your question some more. Appearances, and I got
Hmm.
my air quotes going, showing up places. But in terms of the work going into being on a commercial set or, doing things like that, nah.
No,
Nah, I think
they're not doing true NIL. It's
nah, I think
all their parents. They do just enough to say that that's what we pay for. But then if you look at other spokespeople and you compare the amount of work they do, similarly situated people, no, this is pay to play at the college football level.
absolutely, absolutely. I think a federal work study student is probably putting in more effort than these dudes are for the money that they're getting. But we'll definitely continue this conversation. This actually be a good segue into probably our next overtime show. But until then, continue to follow, like, subscribe on all the major outlets. And until then, see ya later.